Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm taping here at the Hollywood Museum on Highland and Hollywood Boulevard. It's a very, very busy intersection, and the museum is very busy. So come and see what's going on here besides our show, which today has author Stephen Jerrome and landscape designer Andy Cao. Landscape artist Andy Cao was born in Vietnam, came to the U.S. as a teenager, studied architecture at the University of Houston, and graduated from Cal Poly Pomona, right in our backyard, with a degree in landscape architecture. He won the Rome Prize, which to me is fantastic, and he's a Life Fellow, and he's also a Loeb Fellow at Harvard Graduate School of Design. So, when you left Cal Poly, what did you do?
Well, when I left Cal Poly, I really had a hard time looking for work in LA.
I wondered.
So having so much time in my hand and not having much to do, I wanted to do something on my own, and I wanted to make a garden, and that became a glass garden. But when you think of doing something on your own for 3 or 4 months, it ended up 2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Yes.
But what kind of a garden? Where did you think? Was it a fantasy garden? What was it?
Well, it was on the hill of Echo Park, and just a little bungalow that I share with Stephen, and we have a little backyard. And I looked at it and said, "Can we do something with it?" And I always wanted to. I mean, for me, the best way to start out is to do something on my own.
And what was it? Because we have a picture of it, don't we?
Yes.
With the tulips.
It's a glass garden, and without having much to draw from. So I went back to my childhood memories of Vietnam and used that as a starting point for the garden. But when you work with a different medium like recycled glass, and it took a long time to perfecting it and to really lots of trial and error. But that whole garden was really, for me, about, not to really launch my career, but it's more about finding my voice.
Where did you get the glass? Where do you get glass? And was it colored?
It came in multiple colors, cobalt blue, clear glass, and yellow, orange. I mean, it came in many colors. And
what did you use?
We use mostly clear plate glass, so it's white, and cobalt blue. And then throw in some Chardonnay bottles so that you have that beautiful amber color.
Do you make the glass yourself, some of it? I mean, do you break it up yourself?
We tried that in the early days, in the beginning, and it didn't work. So we have to we knock on doors and work with a recycling company.
I see, because I wondered if they do. Do you give them the work, or do they give you the work?
No, it was an experiment, and we worked with them to perfecting it, so that we have to tumble it, you have to process and screen and tumble.
Oh, so you worked with them to do that. It must have been new to them as well.
Yes, but it took about 2.5 years to really make it viable, so that you can use it in the landscape.
What do you learn at architecture class? What do you learn to be a landscape architect?
I wasn't a very good student, so I didn't learn much.
That's why I'm asking you.
I didn't learn much, but
you barely made it, right?
I barely made it. I guess I didn't have a clue. I mean, I made through the program, but
yeah, you just barely made it. But the thing that's so great to me is that you did become a fellow at the American Academy in Rome, which is like one of my favorite places. I just was back east, and they were announcing the new artists who had went.
Yes.
What was your project? What let them choose you?
The glass garden.
It was?
Yes.
The one that you made on the hill in Echo
Yes.
Park? Because they love something different, don't they?
I guess it was the timing was right.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know how I got in. I mean, I read an article about it, and I showed it to Stephen. I said, "Can you imagine going there for 1 year as a fellow?" And then Stephen said, "Why don't you apply?"
And we're
And-
talking about Stephen Jerrome, who
Stephen
is a
Jerrome,
great
yes. And he-
supporter
yes,
of your work.
yes.
And
From the beginning, he's been documenting and supporting me all these years,
Yes.
and document all of the work I've done up to date.
And I know Stephen as a photographer, a wonderful photographer. So let's then go on. And so you sent that in, the glass garden?
So then I went to France, and we did a garden at Chaumont-sur-Loire, and when I came back, we found out that I made it as a finalist.
Uh-huh.
And then
That's
went
so
off to New
exciting.
York for an interview, and then found out I won.
And they were talking about the interviews, and the person who was giving the awards was so excited about talking to each artist, because
Yes.
each artist has such a different view of things. Just like you're saying, you looked for your voice.
Yes.
And you found it. But now you have a partner and a studio.
Yes.
What do you do there? It's called Cao and Perot?
Cao Perot, Xavier Perot. Actually, I met Xavier when I was in France,
Uh-huh.
right at the time of the Rome Prize. So Xavier came with me to Rome for 1 year.
So you had a 1 year...
He came to Rome as my assistant, and now and then after that, then we've been working together ever since, and now he's my partner.
So you're just doing what? Landscape art?
I guess our work is hard to categorize it. It's more like a hybrid between art and landscape.
It is, to me, hard to describe because I see fashion in it. One of the things you say is that you dress the garden. You have a
Yes.
fashion sensibility.
I mean, one can draw inspiration from different fields, but for us, what we find is fascinating is the way one uses material in the fashion industry.
So it's the
And,
same thing,
yes.
right?
So it's in a way you really we really have fun working with different material, and how it's almost like playing dress up, but you're creating this whole world.
But
That-
on the ground,
I mean, it's the whole environment that
Right.
it's like an immersive environment that you can be in it.
is it ecological?
It's not so much about it, but it's about making a place for dreaming.
Oh, more dream. So
Yes.
let's go to Dumbarton Oaks.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about why you were at Dumbarton Oaks and where it is and what it is.
It was one of those serendipity. When I was a law fellow at Harvard,
Uh-huh.
and I met John Beasley, who was teaching there, but John also a director of landscape study department at Dumbarton Oaks. So John Beasley invited me to Dumbarton Oaks to give a talk. And then after that, then he said, "Would you like to come back?" And then he said, "Would you like to do an installation here?"
But that's in D.C., right?
In D.C.
Yes.
So
So you went from Boston,
Yes.
Cambridge, where Harvard was,
Yes.
to down to D.C.,
Yes.
which is probably a train ride, right?
Yes.
And you were invited
And
to give a talk, and
and then came back at the end of my fellowship. And then he said, "Well, let's do an installation." And then we look around, and it's such a beautiful place. You
I
can just be
know.
in there. And we stayed there for the whole month.
the grounds are beautiful.
To really...
and it's so historic,
Yes, it's historic. That's a big challenge, because how can you do something,
contemporary.
yes, contemporary, and doesn't feel like an add-on? So
So what'd you do?
So we work on the airspace.
Yes,
You can't
fabulous
really
to go
change much,
ahead, right?
really
To go
airspace,
up.
Yes, but we have to pick the terrace garden because it's the arbor terrace. That's the hottest area in the summer. So we
Oh,
look
the
at it and we thought,
hottest.
let's introduce a crystal cloud, so that way you can be under it and it could provide shade. In
Is
the
that
summer.
so? That was like useful, beautiful. It had all the elements.
It's sort of like we want to make things that you look at it and you don't question why it's there, what does it mean,
I see.
but more than just a cloud.
So those clouds went to Europe too.
Yes, it's kind of all over the place.
They went all
Yes.
over the place. But what were they made from?
The cloud is made out of a hand sculpted chicken wire,
Ah.
and suspended with Swarovski crystals.
Well, where did Swarovski come into this project now?
Well, if
And
you,
why?
yes, we always like to explore or play with different material. We never question why we want to work with crystal or glass or any material, mother of pearls. It's just something that we think is already available in abundance. Why not use them?
I see.
But when you use them, the challenge is to take something so familiar and transform or change its application or its association.
What you would use,
Yes.
just to take
Yes.
it out of the box.
Yes. And so with Dumbarton Oaks, we just we can get the crystal from China or from anywhere, but it just doesn't. It's just not the right fit. And at that time, I thought, why not work? Why not contact Swarovski?
Did you know that? You knew them and you knew about them?
No, I have to just knock on door.
I see.
And we
I
make the
see.
proposal, and then Swarovski sponsor us, lend us the crystal, 10,000 crystals.
In Washington.
In Washington.
At Dunbar.
Yes.
But they also, you did this tree in Paris. Was it a tree?
The tree, that was for another event, garden event, at the Tuileries.
At the Tuileries. What was
Yes.
that? That was the most beautiful thing I've seen.
That was made out of mother of pearls leaves. So you have to hang each and every single leaf. There were about 20,000 leaves on that tree.
And that was a project in the
It
Tuileries.
was temporary.
How long was it up?
Only up for 2 or 3 weeks.
That's
Yeah,
it.
very short.
But it looked like part of the landscape. I mean, it was
Yes.
beautiful. Tell us, and then the wedding celebration that
Yes.
you had clouds, and
Yes.
where was that?
That was in Dubai for a royal wedding.
Unbelievable. This huge room. Did it
Yes.
have high
Yes.
ceilings?
Really high ceiling, and it's not type project that really push us because we have to work fast and we have to think big.
And
Yes.
take it in and out,
take
right?
it in, yes.
And what was it really?
It was the main feature was the crystal cloud. So we make this series of cumulus cloud as part of the event.
And what were they made from?
Also, same with Swarovski crystal and chicken wire.
And you had candles everywhere, so everything was like sparkling.
That was part of. We only did one element, and the rest were made with the. We teamed up with the event planner.
But it was
Yes.
so fantastic.
I mean, it's one of those that one day out of the blue we get an email from Design Lab Events, and they say, "We like what you do. Would you like to work with us on this wedding?" So,
That's not exactly doing a landscape, is it? But in a way it is.
in a way, it is.
It's not in your backyard.
No. And that's how we do things. We just get these email or phone calls out of the blue, and that's how we find work.
But you're doing work with Swarovski again, right?
We are, yes. We really it's a dream project, and
They must love you.
it's it's one of those projects that's very surreal because it's like, how did we get this project? And
Every time you get a new
yes.
project, you're like, how do we get it?
Yes, and it's scheduled for opening next spring.
And what will it
next
be?
summer.
What will it be? Tell me what you plan.
It's the expansion of Crystal World.
What is that?
Swarovski Crystal Worlds, and that's in Wattens, Austria, and it's at their headquarters.
It's at their
Yes.
headquarters.
And it's a beautiful place.
Is
and
it
now they
a
do-
big building?
No, it's an environment,
Oh.
and now we're doing the expansion. It's a big team, and we are one of the team.
So the expansion means you're making the building
We're
bigger?
designing a park.
Or you design
A
the park?
Yes. And the whole site is 18.5 acres.
Wow.
But-
a lot of trees?
I can't say much about it until the opening day.
Oh no,
Yes.
come on. I can see trees and I can see clouds, but they all have to be with Swarovski, right?
It's one of those that if you want to create a dream world, this is the place.
Fantastic.
So that's what we've been working on.
Andy, that was fantastic. You have to teach when you finish all of these projects? I can see you.
I did on and off. I taught at Cal Poly Pomona and also at USC.
Oh, you-
But it was like a visiting
Visiting
lecturer.
professor,
Yes.
yeah. Well, you have to be a professor to teach that gives this inspiration to people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan, for having me.
Thank you for watching this part. We're going to be right back with photographer, artist, pianist, Stephen Jerrome. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping here at the Hollywood Museum in the historic Max Factor building. And I'm with photographer, author, composer, pianist, Stephen Jerrome, who was born in New Zealand but finished high school in Glendale and went on to work as an assistant at CBS TV City. He spent the 70s in London and the 80s back in Hollywood. And when I met him, he was this fantastic photographer who was going to every party that I went to.
I was. We did.
We did. He then started writing plays, hosting an arts TV show. But I'm going to let him tell you about the rest of it, because we'll start at CBS, where you were on the set with all these fantastic TV stars.
It was an amazing time. Who knew that it was such a seminal time with
Right.
All in the Family and Sonny and Cher and Carol Burnett. And
Iconic.
I saw everybody, including Mark Spitz, just back from the Olympics in a Speedo and all his things, medals hanging around his neck.
How'd you get that job?
A friend of my mother's was a costume, worked in costume department in one of the shows.
Perfect.
They interviewed, I was,
There you
anyway,
were.
and there I was,
There
just
you
like
were.
overnight. And I did, in a period of, actually I was there for quite a while, but in a period of even a month, I saw everybody. And I mean everybody, because all of the shows had guests, and this was a weekly deal, so it was rather amazing.
It was great. It was
and-
really great for you.
And
was-
it got me over being starstruck by anybody except for one person. I saw John Wayne in person, and I didn't care really two hoots about John Wayne, but when you see one of these big Hollywood stars in person, and he was a big man, you go,
that was
wow,
a biggie.
That was
a biggie.
of all people.
But I think that did make a difference in your photography then, didn't it? Because you weren't starstruck.
No, I
you
just
could
moved
just
in.
go in, move in, and do whatever you were doing.
Right, and the odd part about when I was shooting with, in the 80s more, I had no portfolio, but I had a good connection that got me into the Stock Exchange nightclub, which was a big club at the time,
is
and
that
Richard
when-
Roulard was looking for a new guy on the
Is that when
scene.
you went with Richard?
Yeah,
Richard
yeah.
Roulard was my editor
Right.
at the Herald Examiner.
And I started before you did, because he said, somebody's really hot's coming, and it turned out to be you.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And you were photographing me all the time.
And I was.
I
And
love that.
May I?
Oh, what do you have? Oh my gosh, let's put this on the set. Who am I with? Aloma?
Yes.
With Aloma
Yes.
Bruskoff, my favorite. Oh, I love that. Is that okay?
Maybe you can get it later. But
I'm
it
gonna
was odd with
do
that.
it like that.
My camera had I had a broken camera, but
I
believe
can't
it or
believe
not.
this. Oh, and this is for me.
Yeah, that's for you,
Oh
darling.
my gosh, I love it. Oh,
Yeah.
Stephen, thank you. This is so exciting, because I remember so well one time we were at Stephen Arnold's, and you sat down at the piano, and I think it was at Stephen's. We were somewhere. You sat down and you started playing, and just playing and playing, and I was so blown away. I only knew you as a photographer,
Sure,
and here
people
you
don't.
were playing this, just
Well, music,
composing your music and playing it.
particularly with the piano, it's something you have to witness. You can't
I-
carry it around like a guitar.
No,
you
but
know.
who knew you could play?
Well, this
That
is
was
it.
the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back.
Okay.
I mean, we're having
we
too
don't have
much.
we don't have enough time.
We're having too much fun. This is such a surprise. Oh, I just love this. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
The next thing is you went to London. Why'd you leave when you were like on the set and seeing all these people?
Well, long story short, I had hoped to study film and film directing in Czechoslovakia, and at the end, and I went to Prague twice, and communist Czechoslovakia at the time I was brave, but I was a little, it was too much.
But what a good place to go.
Yes, but I wasn't accepted to the film school at the end of the day, and it broke my heart, and I'm still suffering the consequences. But I, as a New Zealand citizen, still, I could go to England and work. So my dad said, I was crying on the phone, and what am I going to do? And my dad said, well, you've got to, you can go as a Commonwealth person, and I'd saved up all this money anyway. So I went to London, completely unplanned. Who knew? And I had a whole new life.
Was it the swinging London at that time, or was it before?
No. It was mid-'70s, so Swinging London was a decade, had passed already.
Was already finished.
And
so what were you doing there?
I worked at Harrods.
Oh,
I worked at Harrods for over 2 years.
I'm trying to get this to show there.
I had a wonderful experience. I went to an employment agency. I heard the guy on the phone talking about Harrods, and I that name rings a bell. And I got on the bus and I went to Harrods, and I got the job just like that.
That's great.
You know, so
but
it was
then you were
marvelous.
connected there too, because everyone was coming into Harrods.
If I'd only turned around, I would have stepped on Jackie Kennedy's foot.
Oh,
and
so you did have everyone.
Yeah, I mean everybody.
I
and
said-
Lord and Lady so-and-so, princess and
Right.
princess from all over Europe, every day. It was amazing.
And what department were you in?
Well, it had no romance, but it was so practical. Frosted food.
Oh, were you downstairs in the food
I
department?
was in the food halls in the frozen food department, but frozen food was great.
Frosted.
That's what they call it, darling. So, but what they had meat, vegetables, dessert, and all the snacks, everything frozen. So I got everything half price. So I never ate so well or dressed so well because I had friends up in the way-in shop.
That's so great.
And then with the flat that I was living in, the woman who answered the door when I first went over there ended up being my wife. But at the time, she was working for the French Chamber of Commerce, and so she got all this cheap, really
French
good
stuff.
French wine.
Right.
I got all this stuff from Harrods, and I never ate so well or dressed so well as when I was so poor working at Harrods.
Isn't that the good story?
Isn't that cool?
And there were so many people, because I remember Harrods distinctly, and the food halls is the first time I saw David Hockney.
Ah.
And that was way, way back.
Yeah. And
So
this is pre-Arabs, too.
tell me, before it was when it was really Harrods.
Yeah, really Harrods. I caught it at the last of its 100-year era, and it's almost like iconic in my soul, that experience that I had, because I was there for over 2 years. It was really rich.
So when were you writing? Were you writing all the time?
I really was writing all the time, but most of it was journals. But then I started telling stories in screenplays, and I wrote a lot of screenplays, and then even within the realm of the writing, each one has its own different character. And finally, I wrote one, well, if I could tell the story of New Suburbia,
Let's talk about it.
It's rather something. We were in Seattle and took a wrong turn that took us suddenly through these hills, and eventually we turned around, came back, and I saw the hills that we came through. And I was so touched by, imagine growing up in a neighborhood like that, and I took a picture of it. And I have that picture. And then 2 nights later, in a hotel room in San Francisco, I had a dream about a family, 2 families, characters, all set in this neighborhood that I'd just seen, that had so touched my heart. And so as soon as I got back to LA, I wrote a screenplay called New Suburbia, and 2 years later, it's the novel, because I thought I'm ready for long form.
So these things seem to come easy to you.
They do. And when I'm ready to write, I sit down and write, and it just kind of comes out without a bunch of drama and blocks.
So
and,
the novel then just comes at a...
Well, the problem was with the screenplay, which I love these characters so much, and the milieu of these characters, but a screenplay is like a sketch, and I wanted to draw the whole painting.
Right, I see.
And I thought I've written long enough that I think I can jump into long form. And so I wrote New Suburbia, and then right away I wrote the second novel, and I submitted New Suburbia to a publisher. They were mulling it over, and I said, well, by the way, I have another one you might be interested in, and they picked that up before they picked up the first one.
Oh, they did. And that other one was Gray Rooms.
2 Gray Rooms.
2 Gray Rooms.
That was inspired by a Joni Mitchell song called 2 Gray Rooms.
And what's that story?
That story is a gay love story about, You gotta read it. I don't know. I don't want to give it the wrong slant, but it's a wonderful. It's a more the publisher positioned New Suburbia as a young adult novel. Two Gray Rooms is more of a grown-up piece.
And Two Gray Rooms is on
That's
ebook.
an ebook only,
It's an ebook.
regrettably.
And before we leave, I know you're involved in this wonderful company, Cao and Perot,
Yes.
which is a landscape design company.
Yes.
And you've been documenting what they've been doing.
Since before they were Cao Perot.
Before they were Cao.
Yeah,
So what?
yeah.
Just before we have to leave in a minute, just
Okay.
tell me what they're doing.
Well, I've seen the whole thing incrementally, day by day. So, but they create dream environments. Andy is a sculptor at heart, and his work is really large-scale environmental work.
Andy Cao of
Andy
the Cao Perot.
Yes. And I've simply photographed the finished pieces, as nobody else seems to be able to do properly.
I was going to say, and how do you do it? Because they're like light pieces, and
That's right.
And how do you do that?
It's
Self-taught again, don't tell
self-taught.
me.
I don't know, but I catch the atmosphere as other photographers haven't seemed apparently been able to do. And as I've been doing it so long, I just sort of intuit. I'm one with the evolution of the company.
And the other thing that I thought about, and to end it, I can see that as becoming a documentary movie.
Well, I've got so much stuff that, yeah, it could be.
I
You're
think
right.
that's what you should do.
Okay, thank you. I'll take your advice.
And thank you
Thank
very
you, Joan.
much for being with
Thank
me.
you very much.
I loved having Stephen Jerrome on this part of the show, and I thank you for watching. Keep writing to JAQUINN1@AOL.com, and we thank O and M Co. in New York for all their help.